Hi, Kasana. How are you today?
I'm doing good, Misty. How are you?
I'm doing great. I am so thrilled that you joined me. I love your artwork. I enjoy your classes, and I'm just thrilled for you to be joining us on our first Real Artist interviews. Woohoo!
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's just my pleasure. I'll go ahead and jump right in. Can you tell us a little bit more about you and your artistic journey to where you are now?
Okay. Uh, so I was born in Soviet Union, in Moscow. It's not Soviet Union anymore, so I'm from a different country, from Russia. Uh, so I always wanted to draw and paint. I was always interested in art, and you could always see me sitting somewhere in the corner drawing and painting, but I didn't get any formal training when I was a child. You know, art schools were pretty scarce, so I tried to join an art studio, and I went to talk to the teacher there, and he said, sorry, we're full, we can't accept you. So I just kept doing it, from books and by myself. And then when it was time for me to go to college, I thought I would go to an art college and become a fabric designer. That was my dream. But my parents are like, well, we don't know about that. That doesn't sound like a good profession. So why don't you go to an architectural college? And they have drawing and painting classes there. So that's what I did. So I ended up being an architect. I wasn't very good at drawing and painting there because it was very academic. We had to draw like Greek statues, and then they will send us outside to draw the city so we can get the perspective down really well. And it was funny because uh, painting class, we would work on still lifes for quite a while, and then when at the end of the semester we're like, okay, now go outside and paint the streets. Like, wait a minute. This is something completely different. And then we will bring our paintings. They're like, this is not very good. We're like, okay, sorry. So I didn't have any formal training, so I was really struggling with those classes. And I thought, well, okay, I guess it didn't work out. I'll just be an architect. And I spent about 15 years sitting in front of the computer. But it was a good thing because even when I came to United States in 2004, I very quickly found a job, and it wasn't really a problem for me to transition uh, to kind of new job market. So that was good. But then in, I think, 2008, I was laid off my job, and I was looking for something else to do. Um, I kind of started my own little business doing Russian English translation. And I thought, well, maybe this is my chance to really go back into art. So I did. So I started taking art classes, um, participating in workshops and live painting groups. And I really got into it. I started reading about art, and I could really see improvement. And I thought, well, maybe I really can do it. So I think I hear from my students now that they don't think they can get any good results, but I think it's just persistence. It's not some magical thing that somehow appears out of thin air. It's just, if you work on it, you will be good and you will be successful. So that's how I started doing art professionally. And then in 2014, I was working for an art consultant, and I was like, well, if I spend 8 hours in the office, it's really hard for me to do any art by myself. So I crunched some numbers, and I figured out I can actually quit my day job and dedicate myself to art full time. So I founded my company, Tamirab Studio, and I tried different things. I tried just selling art at art fairs and events. I tried getting into more illustration or product design, and kind of tried different things and realized that that's I still sell art, but it's not the main thing I do. But I was getting more and more into, people will ask me, how did you paint this, how do you sketch so fast, how do you work with colors so well? And I got more and more into teaching art, so now it's my main focus. And I'm pretty good with technology, so I'm able to produce video classes, and I have a YouTube channel on that thing, all those things. So that started to kind of, my business started to take shape a little more.
I love that you bring up that you can create art as long as you're persistent, because this is really cool. I was also laid off in 2008. I was in the real estate and I went and took my first art class, but I ended up getting discouraged and quit. And I went into other things that was so much easier. It was close enough to drawing and painting, but it was just so much easier for me to do. But what I've learned coming back to it and actually being persistent and showing up and just doing the hard work, that I do make progress and that I can actually create and do those things. So I'm really glad that you bring that up, because unlike you, I didn't stick it out and I didn't see that progress until my second time around, and really just dedicated to it, whether I was successful at making something that was beautiful or not, just sticking to it because I wanted to do it. So I'm glad that you actually brought that up.
And art is a spiritual thing. It's, aesthetic thing, but it's also a manual skill. We maybe don't want to think about it that way, but it's, eye, brain, and hand coordination. So you need to train your hand to do what your eyes see. So, and it's only time and practice. There's, no shortcut to that.
Yeah, so there's hope for all of us slow learners.
Right? If you want to do it, you can do it. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it leads me to a question, a burning question is like, what did you wish that you knew when you first started out?
Well, if we talk about a kind of approach to art, is I realized over time it's not something you can do occasionally if you want to be really good at it. You almost have to do it every day, because when you pick up the pencil, like when I teach a class, I don't just start doing demos. I have to spend maybe half an hour beforehand warming up. So it's almost like you make a step forward, and if you quit, you take 2 steps back. So it's like you forget what you learned, no matter how good you are. And I've heard it from other artists who, really famous ones, and who've been doing it for many years. They say that you cannot stop. So I think my progress would have been faster if I was persistent, but I should have been even more consistent with my art practice. But also from technical perspective, there were some things that I was kind of avoiding. Like I hated color theory and I couldn't understand what it's for. And because it's so boring when you like read the color theory book, mix this with that and paint swatches. And I was like, I know if you mix yellow and blue, you will get green. What else do I need to know? But, those complex subjects, they're really worth your time exploring and studying. So technical aspects of art are very important as well.
They really are. And I'm glad that you bring that up, because so much time is really avoiding those really tough subjects and just trying to get by. And I actually do a research on color theory and color works, because it was such a boring subject and it was just so hard, that I found fun in, I just found ways to make it fun. And that's, I've started to learn that you just have to trick yourself with the technical things and the not so fun things, so that way you can really evolve as the artist that you want to be.
But I think it's also kind of your artistic journey brings you to it, because if you don't need something, you're not going to study it. But once you, like, my paintings all look the same, so I need to look into color theory, into expanding my palette. So your practice kind of pushes you to do those things.
Yes, absolutely. Because that's what I think, that at least for me, that's what happens to me too, is that I wanted to be able to do things, but because my comprehension of it wasn't good enough, it really blocked me, because I want to be able to illustrate my books, and you have to be really consistent with color in order to be able to do that. So I'm just like, oh, here it goes. But I couldn't do it because it was so boring. It was so complex. I'm just like, I got to find a fun way to be able to do it. Right. And that, and I guess that's what really comes up, is like when we're struggling the most, we just have to find a way to make it happen for us.
Yeah, I totally agree.
One of the questions I really love to ask is like, I want to know your biggest creative challenge that you like consistently have to battle, and how have you overcome that?
Um, Biggest creative challenge. I think the biggest challenge for me is staying focused because I'm interested in a lot of subjects and in a lot of genre, and I want to leave my mark on every single one of them. But you have to stay focused, and it's kind of prioritizing things is probably a creative challenge for me. So not to spread myself too thin and pick a subject and work on it, because if you do one painting it can be successful, but you really have to have a series if you want to get in depth on something. And I worked on a human figure for quite a while, and that was really interesting for me. Now I'm moving on more to landscape painting, and maybe they will be include they will include human figure there somewhere too. So it's all our artistic arsenal, but you can jump all over the place all the time. So I think staying focused is really important but difficult.
I think that is like the number one thing that I hear. And I struggled with that so much. And now what I ended up doing is like removing everything. Like once I'm dedicated to learning one particular thing, I take everything else and I pack it away. It's in boxes up on a shelf that I can't even reach. And I don't have a ladder. I'm bad. I'm so undisciplined. And so I lock them up and I do all kinds of like things to make sure that I don't, lose that focus. So I love that you bring that up because I think that has got to be the hardest thing for us.
Right. You see some photo or you travel somewhere and you get all excited, you want to jump in and do it. And maybe you have time for it, but there is other things that you need to do too. So
Well, I love this. Like I have followed your figure work, and I don't know how long you've been working on it, but I really have loved being able to watch that because you do beautiful work, and it's so loose and it's so playful. I'm just curious to how long have you been doing it, and do you actually rework any of those paintings?
not really. It started, I was attending a live figure sketching group, and the model sits for 20 minutes, and the way the group was organized is that the model will change the pose every 20 minutes. And before that, like in college, I worked from statues who don't move and don't change their pose at all. So I was used to academic drawings when you have 3 hours, let's say at least, if not longer, to work on something. And when I started doing that quick sketching, uh, I was always too late. The model will change the pose and you can't go back to it. And so I slowly started developing this technique where I capture the model in those 20 minutes that she or he is sitting on the podium. So that technique that I developed and that style kind of came from those live model sessions. And I build it to where I can even do it in color. And then people, like I said, started asking me, how do you do that? And then I started thinking myself, how do I do that? And I structured it a little more and turned it into class. But I think the whole point of that technique is not to go back and rework anything. It's that spontaneity that you have. That's the biggest asset. So that's what I'm trying to preserve. And even if I work from a photo now, I try, kind of set the timer and paint as quickly as I can and then leave it. Because I think once you start reworking things and like, I'll make a little correction here and I'll add a little bit here, it just loses its freshness. So.
I really like that, and it's just a point that it makes me think about is that you did this so much that you were able to actually build those muscles and those skills. And when you first started out, you weren't able to stick within that 20-minute time limit. And the more that you did it, you actually really started to find the techniques to where you could capture that. So I love that. How long did it take you?
It was several years probably that I attended that group once a week. I would say maybe 5 years. And I can tell you, if you look at my sketchbooks from that time, I was terrible because it just it looked like a comic book figure, then it looked like complete mess, and then you just like make a breakthrough at certain point. You're like, wow, that actually looks like a human being. I can but it takes a while. And I tell my students too, because I didn't know what I was doing, it took me so long because I had to try all those things. I tried building the structure like they taught me in college. You draw the central line and you kind of rough in all the elements, but you can't do that in 20 minutes. It's too long. So I developed the technique where you just quickly draw the outside and you fill it in inside, and that speeds up the process quite a while. So if you learn that technique, it will, you will shorten the learning period. But yeah, it took me years to figure it out.
But I love that. It really shows people that it does take years to be able to develop and work on these skills, and that it's not an overnight success. Because when I first started out, I thought I should have that overnight success. That 1 3-hour class, I should be able to master that one skill. And it really prevented me so many times thinking I couldn't be a successful artist, because I didn't know the truth that it takes hours of dedication and hours of work to actually be able to gain those skills. And it's something that I've only been working on for the last couple of years, where I'm actually dedicating that time. It just takes time.
Yeah, 20-minute sketch takes years of development. And I wish I knew some magic secret that I can reveal, but there's none.
I know, I totally wish that, because what I ended up doing is just working on this simple technique part. So like working with lines with all my different pencils, working with the strokes that my brush, can make, and really building up that confidence over time so I don't get discouraged, because it's so easy to get discouraged when you don't see the growth and development so quick.
Right.
And I found ways to actually find that encouragement and like get myself like, oh, it's getting there.
And I saw it several times with my students too. Those people that I went to that figure sketching group with. One lady, she started from scratch. I mean, she had no art classes in her life, and she could, like she said herself, like I tried to draw a human being, but it turns out to be an alien. It doesn't even look like a human being. And she took my class and she stuck with it. She would show up every week and she will go to other figure sketching groups. And I could see with my eyes, she showed me her sketch and it looked like a great drawing. And so she made that breakthrough also over a few years, but she made it and she became much better artist. She was able to draw human figure very accurately. So
you see, and
that's
that's
not just like one person. It's true for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I mean that's the magic, and like that was the biggest relief for me, and where I would actually like, hey, it does take this time and I'm going to be successful. I don't have to compare my art to someone who's been doing it years before me, because I never picked up a pencil until I was in my 30s. And
Right.
so I wasn't born this creative. Well, I was, but it got away really quick, very young at age. And I wasn't doing all these creative things. I wasn't singing and drawing and painting and doing all these things. I did other things because I wasn't a brilliant genius who could do it right away. And even as a young child I knew that. And so it just it is like that gift, and that blessing to know that everyone can actually draw, everyone can actually paint. It just takes you really wanting it and loving it to do it.
Yeah, you came into art because it was your desire. Yeah.
And there's hope.
For all of us. Yeah.
One of the things is like I ask this question for everyone. I want to know a fun, quirky fact about you that no one else knows. Are you brave enough to share?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if it's funny or just kind of true for me, but because I didn't really study art in depth in Russia. It's much easier for me to talk about art in English. So the thing is, I don't really know all the Russian terms for art. So when I when I try to talk to people, I kind of have to think about it, which words to use. Like to my friends in Russia, it's hard for me to talk about art. I wouldn't even know how to say artwork in Russian. And English is a lot shorter than Russian. So you have all those, you kind of glue words together and you make a new word, but you can't do that in Russian. So you have to kind of connect words differently. So
Oh my gosh.
terminology is a problem.
Oh my gosh, I would have never dreamt of that. That is so funny. Like, okay, so now it just leads me, because I'm just a curious person. I can't even help myself. It always makes me think of questions. But how often do you have these conversations? Did you actually make up new Russian words to explain things? Like, how do you do that?
It's just conversation becomes very stilted when and I think I'm pretending, that I don't know the words, but I really don't, because all the art books I read were in English, and I took all the classes in English. So I learned the terminology when I was already, speaking English every day of my life. So uh, a friend of mine in Russia, she's a photographer. So she's like, so what you working on? And I'm like, what do you call that? So we're having some very stilted conversations.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Me trying to remember Russian words.
So I have one more curious question. Do you actually get to go home a lot? Is your family over here, or?
My mom comes here every year. Well, she used to come every year, but now she basically lives here because she can't really go back. They canceled, all the flights and things like that. And situation in Russia with the virus is not very good. So I don't want her to go back. And the winter is coming. So winters are much better in Texas than in Russia, I can tell you that.
Agreed.
But yeah, I try to go there occasionally. Russia has such rich culture. So I enjoy just being a tourist, doing sightseeing, visiting all the museums. You can always go to the theater. There is plenty to choose from every night, And Houston is great too. We have a big art museum and we have opera and ballet, but there are just not that many performances as in Moscow, obviously. So yeah, we sometimes go and just do cultural stuff.
I think that is magical, and I could definitely see all the different color palettes and all that historical art coming into play, and so inspirational, even with the architect too,
Right.
So it's just like a magical place to be able to get that art inspiration. I'm just so thankful that you joined us, and I'm just delighted to be able to learn more about you and your art process and the things that you offer our community. So just thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Misty. It was so fun talking to you.
Well, I hope that you guys enjoyed today's interview. And if you have any questions, just post them down below. And I'm sure Kasana will be happy to answer them for you guys. And you guys have a great day. Bye, guys.